go. Sweet.
Good evening, and thank you all for coming. We're going to go ahead and get started. I want to call this meeting to order, and the first thing we have on here is the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Matt Hodges.
Everybody stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
All right. Our next thing on our agenda is the mission statement. Mr. Draper.
Beaufort County Schools will provide quality educational programs and services to ensure student academic and vocational success.
Thank you. And moving on, we are down to 1.4, which is public comments. We have, I think, a couple people.
Yes, you actually have three.
Have three? All right.
All right, so let me read this.
Mr. Cheeseman is going to be reading the parameters of what public comment are about.
Welcome to the Beaufort County Board of Education meeting. Your presence is welcomed and encouraged by the board. We invite comments during the public comment section of the board meeting. This time is set aside for the board to hear comments on programs, policies, and procedures. The board typically will not respond to nor take any immediate action on the concerns expressed, but please be assured the board will take all comments under advisement. In addition to conduct the meeting, in order to conduct the meeting in an orderly and efficient manner, the following guidelines have been established. Persons wishing to speak should have already registered prior to the board meeting by listing their name, address, telephone number, and topic to be addressed. To maximize participation, comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Yielding time to another speaker will not be permitted. A maximum of 4 speakers will be allowed to speak on one agenda item. The chairman will invite speakers to the podium in the order in which they are registered. Comments must be issue-oriented. Complaints against any employee will not be heard in public session. All regular board meetings are public meetings. However, a public meeting is not an open forum. Public participation is limited to public comment section so that the board may deliberate important decisions without distraction or interference. Our system of public education depends on your involvement. No more important task exists for any community than the education and care of its children. Public schools become what the community wants them to be, so please feel free to share with us your expectations for our schools and our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cheeseman. We have three people that have signed up for public comment, and if you would come to this podium right here, I think the mic should be on. Make sure you're speaking into the microphone. The first one up is V. Wallace Victor.
You got a timer? Who's keeping time? I got it.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
I am going to speak about the closing of the EdTech Center. Now, I was one of the teachers that helped to open the EdTech Center when it first started. We were there from Highland Boulevard.
Can you lean forward a little more toward the mic? It's hard to hear.
From Highland Boulevard to Harvey Street and then to Bridge Street. I was one of the ones who helped to put the furniture in the first building. We even had to borrow chairs from the fire department for our students to sit in for the first 2 and 3 days of school. It meant that much to us to have this building and have this opportunity. We have had students to come there and to graduate, hundreds of them. Might not have been large classes, but they were students who went there and did their best. We have had students to graduate, to become registered nurses, to become different professions. One I can tell you for sure is a chemical engineer for Duke Power, and that was my son. He was acting up at the high school, and I brought him over there. This is the reason we have this class, to help change the world for these kids, to bring them into a learning area where they can learn what they need to learn in order to get out into the public and make a difference. One student, it was the second year that the EdTech was established, came all the way from Ahoskie. She got approval to come all the way from Hosky just to come to the Ed Tech to go to school. She was 20 years old, and she felt like this was her last opportunity. She became a registered nurse. So this school is needed. It's not just something that is put aside to throw kids to waste time. It makes a difference in our community. It makes a difference in people's lives. So this school is not something that was just put there to waste taxpayers' money, but it was put there to educate those that need education. And it is not necessarily for, as they say, bad kids. Some students go there because they don't like the large classroom. We had one student, he was, well, for lack of a better word, he was one of the sweetest persons I ever knew, but he was very, very, very shy. He didn't like being around a lot of people. But he thrived there at the Ed Tech Center, and he graduated, and he has a steady job to this day. So it just don't throw a wonderful opportunity away. Now, I was there from the beginning of the Ed Tech Center up until October of 2012, when I had to leave because of health. But if it wasn't for that, I would still be there. We have a purpose and a need for the Ed Tech Center, and it's just not something to waste money.
Thank you, Ms. Victor. I appreciate it so much. Next up is Candace, is this Hyman's, not Nimmons? Nimmons?
And I
That's absolutely fine.
can announce the topic.
Yes. The topic is Beaufort County Early College High School in favor of students being allowed to play in sports. Okay, and once again, 3 minutes, and go. Speak into the microphone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm representing as an advocate on the matter along with students who share my views. With the matter that is being deliberated for the next weeks to come, I wanted to share with you why I support early college high school students joining sports. Early college high school is providing an amazing education for many students, such as myself, but there is something missing. I feel that we are shy of a half circle to become well-rounded students. The other half is sports, which are just as important as any class that a student can take. A sport can be an outlet for not only a healthy life, but for life lessons as well, which can help in our futures. It can help reward students because colleges don't only look for people who excel in academics, they also look for people, social people, who know how to own a field and a test. So it would be nice to have the same opportunity as high school and homeschool students to try new things like sports to find out what lifelong profession we want and become well-rounded students ready to conquer whatever comes our way in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Next is Teresa Nimmons on the same topic.
Good evening. I came here not prepared to speak on the topic, but I felt inspired because my daughter Candace Nimmons has passion about the topic and wants to play sports. So I'm a parent and I fully support her interest in becoming a more well-rounded student. So I just want to stand here and say please support the early college high school students so that they can play sports just like homeschool students and the other high school students. And I'm very proud of my daughter and I hope she has that opportunity if the board goes ahead and allows that. Thank you.
Thank you. And you should be very proud. Wonderful student. Good job.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to move on from public comments, and now we're on 2.1, and I need a motion. If you've had a chance to look at the whole agenda, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Now, the next one, there are a lot of minutes here, and if you will let Cindy know if you need to be recused from any of these minutes if you were absent, if you'll take a minute and look at those.
May 22nd for me, please.
Anyone else?
May 22nd for me.
May 22nd for EC as well.
I'm good.
Just put me down, I know.
That's
Do you have one?
I do.
Which one is yours?
I can't figure it out yet. Just say I recused.
Okay. From one of the many.
One of many
One of
here.
many. Okay.
I think it was 22nd.
I think so too, because we just did have 5.
That's right. I think that was the one.
All right, anyone else? All right, now I entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Butch?
Second.
Okay. We've got a motion to approve by Butch and a second by Mr. Draper. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, we're going to approval of minutes. Now, the next one says no action, but it truly is an action because I'm going to ask Ms. Pettaway to come to the mic, and this will be the Golden Leaf grant presentation.
Good evening, and thank you for being here this evening. First, I'd like to introduce Mr. Jason Rochelle. He is here from Golden Leaf to present the award of a grant that we've been working on. It's been a journey for our community, for this board, for our commissioners, for many in our community that are with various companies, with our economic developer, who is Mr. Johnson, that's here this evening, Dr. Luke, who's with Beaufort Community College, and some others who could not be here. Thank you to Mr. Cheeseman for his hard work on this grant and making it possible. This has been an almost 2-year endeavor that began with the Rural Center and having some community meetings and a subcommittee that formed about 4 years ago and started working on our economic development and building, the pipeline of employment for our community to help retain students and adults in the community. I appreciate our principals who've been working diligently on this, our high school principals in the last several months, and Andrea Lilly, who couldn't be here this evening. She's at a conference. But this particular grant is geared to be able to give our students skills that when they exit high school, they can have industry certifications, they can enter the workforce ready to go into entry-level jobs and progress into higher level positions as they go, and also pursue education at the same time. These are vital to our community to retain our population, to provide the type of living that we would like for our community members to be able to hold. And I'm just so grateful to have the opportunity this evening for Beaufort County Schools to be the recipient of this grant. Jason, would you like to?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I think you covered most of my speech. No, I do appreciate you guys inviting me here tonight, Mr. Cheeseman, the board. I'm excited for the work that's ahead for the school system and what this grant will allow you guys to do. Golden Leaf is dedicated to increasing economic opportunity in North Carolina's rural and historically tobacco-dependent community. Last year, we came through with our community grants making initiative. It goes around the state at different regions, and it was this region's turn. And so we were looking at projects that, help create jobs, but we also know the flip side of that is, how do you make sure you have highly skilled people to fill those jobs? And so the school system put together a compelling application that really worked with its workforce development board, business partners, community college, others, really on how could we best do that. And so what they said is, look, there's some real growing industries. They talked to local industry and said, we really need to help provide additional training in the areas of healthcare, advanced manufacturing, welding, automotive, and other areas. And so the school system has requested funds for renovation of classrooms, for equipment for either new programs and also upgrades to existing programs. And when we heard that, we said, that's the niche. That fits what we want to do. And also the fact that you guys are partnering with all of these other local industries, community colleges, was also what we wanted to see in those relationships. And so as a result, I am here this evening on behalf of Golden Leaf's Board of Directors, our board chair, Randy Eisenhower, and our acting Golden Leaf president, Ted Lord, to present Beaufort County Schools with a symbolic check for $1,235,000 to help you guys make that vision a reality, to build upon your current good work, and to help you grow a skilled workforce in Beaufort County. Congratulations.
I'd like, for the picture, if the whole board will get in the picture, I would appreciate it. And on behalf of the Beaufort County Board of Education, I want to thank Golden Leaf, and we are so excited for the opportunities that this will allow our students in all of our high schools to have a skill. As I was told by one person, we have jobs, but we need job seekers. So we're going to get our students ready to be those job seekers. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes. Dr. Blue and Matt. Yes.
Sure?
Yes, yes.
Get that camera stretched to his I'll stand right back. I can do that.
Come on around. Come on around. Come on around, y'all. Stand on that.
I was going to stand back there, but I can't do All right, you're the man with the check.
Thank you.
Just put it in my camp. Yeah, right, but the my account. Put it in the account.
All right, we're going to move right along. The next item up, this is a non-action item. This is just for discussion. Ms. Emily Paik on the early college high school request to participate in extracurricular activities, as so eloquently presented by Ms. Means.
Good evening. I would like to thank you for allowing me to represent the early college high school students. I'm here tonight to request that you allow early college high school students to participate in extracurricular activities at the 3 traditional high schools. Every year when I recruit students at the middle schools, they always ask me, I get the same questions, well, can I play sports there? Can I participate in the band? And I have to tell them no, unfortunately, and this is a hard decision for a middle school student to make at 13 years old. And some of them would benefit financially by attending the early college, but they give that opportunity up so they can play sports at the traditional school. I have met with all the high school principals. Mr. Swenson is here tonight in support of this, and all of the high school principals are in support of allowing the early college high school students to participate in extracurricular activities on their campuses. So what does this look like and how does it work? We are a 5-year program. What you have in front of you is a list of the students that attend from each attendance area. So the number that you see, the total, will be added to the number for conference level status, which will be determined, I believe, in August after they get the 10-day ADM from the schools. Transportation would not be an issue. We run 3 shuttle buses from the early college to the traditional schools. So they would be there for practice and they would also be there for home games. So the only responsibility for the parents would be to get the students to the activity buses at the traditional high schools for away competitions. So at this time, I'd like to answer any questions that you may have regarding the topic.
Okay. Anybody want to, like I said, this is a non-action item. This is just a presentation by Ms. Paik. And thank you, Dr. Swenson, for attending. But anyway, I see your totals and your breakdowns. So does anybody have any questions?
I've always got a couple.
This is, yeah, and this is presented a little differently than when you've asked in the past. But right now, you're only, you've got in here about extracurricular. But you're only talking about sports?
Specifically, sports and band at Washington High School. The marching band meets after school, and I believe at Northside and Southside, that's built into the school day.
Okay. And have you spoken to those band directors at the other two schools to see if they would like to reconfigure their schedule?
I can do that. I have not, but I can do that.
I think it's worth a shot to ask the other two principals and band directors if they would like, because if your home school, if your home territory is Southside or Northside, I wouldn't want you to be deprived of the opportunity, whereas a Washington High School student would be. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Now, you said transportation wouldn't be an issue, but what time do buses leave early college to go back to their home
They
schools?
leave at 2:55, so all the buses are on the campuses before the students are even dismissed.
Okay.
And am I allowed to, I'm asking because I'm not sure to have received, yes, okay, sure.
Mr. Larry, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, my name is Kyle Critter, I'm the band director at Washington High School.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I can go answer that for you right quick. Our practicing starts till right after school, so actually that would actually be perfect.
Right, yeah, that's, I meant for Northside and Southside, with theirs being during the day, they may want, if they know, and I don't know what the board decision will be, but if they knew that that opportunity was there, they may want to ask their principals to redo their schedule. But I'm not basing that on anything I know. I'm just throwing it out there. I'd want those students to also have the opportunity.
Yeah, that's
I'm sorry, I didn't
understandable.
recognize you because I see you from the back all the time directly.
And there were a lot of students, they're rising sophomores, and they are here tonight, but there were a lot of parents, kind of disappointed when they found out they couldn't play band or participate in the marching band at Washington High School. So there were probably 10 to 12 students that gave that up to attend the early college.
And I've seen 150 would be added at Washington High School. Are we close on classification changes?
Yeah.
So we way off?
With that
When I came on board a couple of years ago, we were at about 1,020, I think, when I took over. That was the initial number I saw, something
That's got to go up pretty high.
And then, but now we're down to maybe 890 over at Washington. So you add another 150, so you're looking at 990, just over 1,000 back to where we were before, 2.8 when I came. The thought process now is that we remain 2.8, however, in a year they're going to reclassify. The state's going to reclassify anyway, so we're not sure where we fall.
Right.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Hope that answers.
Yeah, I didn't think we were, but I didn't know.
And I'm not sure how, that would affect you anyway, because isn't it, the classification, isn't that done by your ADM? Which her students wouldn't really be under your ADM.
They would be added.
They would be. That's what added.
But they'd have to be added for athletics, or, we're only talking about athletics, right?
It would be added.
Because junior ROTC and band is not a classification, so we'd just be talking about athletics. And how about your coaches? Are they receptive to this? Have you talked with your coaches?
I've talked to the athletic director, and so far receptive, but the same types of questions that are coming from you guys, same types of questions from them, where we stand classification-wise.
Right,
If the students
right.
come back up.
I can see the concern that they always want to build a team to win. I mean, you coach to win. Let's be real. They coach to win, and I can foresee some parents of Washington High School students possibly being upset if their son or daughter is bumped from playing because of an early college high school student who doesn't attend that school getting not a priority, but I mean, like I said, they coach to win. So that, I'm sure some of your coaches might feel like they're being put in a position where they've got to pick and choose, but ultimately, that's what you do to outfit a team anyway. Butch, have you had any input from the north side area about this yet? And this is
This
just,
first I've heard of it.
yeah, okay.
Do we currently have a cap at early college, number of students? I know we do.
Yes, the MOU
What
is 300
300?
total.
And what are you at now? You're
We
pretty
are
close.
at almost 280.
That's what I thought, you're pretty close. Okay. All right, if there aren't any more questions, we're certainly just, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I guess since you are a 5-year program,
They're not eligible. The fifth-year
And they're
students
fifth-year.
will not be eligible because, based on the Athletic Association, it's 8 consecutive semesters.
okay,
So
well, I
they'll
guess
start
my
as a
question
ninth
is,
grade.
if they don't play in their 8th grade year, can their,
Or the ninth
excuse me, in
grade
their
year.
ninth grade, in their first year, does that leave them eligible?
They would have
For the
3
fifth year?
years.
They
No,
would- okay.
they are not eligible for the 5th year.
Okay.
Because they're a fifth-year student, may not be a fifth-year athlete, but, so you're saying regardless, if, let's say they don't even try out to their junior year there, or their third year,
Right.
they still are only eligible for their third and fourth year?
That's correct.
Okay. Does everybody understand what we're talking about there? Okay.
How about dealing, I know that's probably not a real big issue for you, but discipline issues,
Fifth-year student.
Yeah.
I guess you would have to coordinate back and forth with the other principals if there's any students with attendance, discipline, grades, things like that, that
Correct.
would, I mean, you would have to, yeah, certain coaches have certain rules, and I guess you would communicate that information back to the principal so they would know if there was an issue with a student that needed to be dealt with.
Yeah, and it's very similar to, with us sharing buses, there are, bus referrals that I receive that happen on Washington High School's campus, and I still have to deal with those as the principal of that child.
Ms. Bake, based on the chart that you gave the board, the total is 235, so is the difference that 5th year?
Yes.
All right, just making sure.
Any other questions?
Well, I just want to make a comment. I was on the committee along with Robert Belcher at the time when the early college was just a dream. And one of the selling points to the students to go there, they were going to forego any extracurricular activities. Now, by doing this, what's going to make your school any different than anybody else's school?
Well, they still can start college classes earlier. I mean, there is a difference. And, with the students.
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
That's
I'm just
okay.
making a point.
Yeah.
What's going to make it your school? How many other early colleges have athletic programs?
There are Nash Rocky Mount. They actually have 4 traditional high schools in their county and 2 early colleges, and they allow their students to participate at the traditional schools. So there are other early colleges that allow this.
But we understood when we first started this with the community college that when you had your parent conferences with the students and everything, they understood up front there was not going to be any extracurricular activities. This was just strictly going to school for your academics.
And Pitt County does not allow.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was my concern too, is that we just forming another school that looks like the ones we already have. And the reason I asked, why did we have a cap? I knew we had a cap, but the reason I asked for that is once students realize, well, I can go through this process and still play sports, there might not be as much incentive for those to stay back at high schools. And right now, we just can't afford to empty out our high schools any more than we already have.
Well, it's not going to increase my enrollment by allowing the students to participate in sports.
Well, it won't as long as we have a cap.
Right.
But
And with
if we didn't have a
cooperative
cap,
and
why wouldn't
innovative,
if they wanted to go though?
with cooperative and innovative high schools, each grade level can only be over at 100 kids.
Right.
It can't be over that. But we use a rubric when we select the students, and athletics, that has nothing to do with the rubric. So we would still bring in the same amount. Our enrollment would not increase. Now, the applications may, the
Right.
number of applications, and every cohort that we have, every grade level is 60-40, 60 female, 40 male. And a lot of the reasons why the students do not, some of the male students choose not to attend is because of the sports and band.
I don't know.
But I understand, and we'll give it serious consideration and thought. But yeah, I had the very same concern when I first read this on the agenda is students know what they're signing up for when they sign up and apply to go to early college. And if we keep bit by bit eliminating those roadblocks that keep them at their traditional high school, then it becomes a concern that we are. I mean, you can ask now, Dr. Swenson has a lot more students, but our other 2 high schools, have lost students to go to early college. And so one of their selling points is that they have athletics. So if you take that away from their selling point, it makes it more difficult for those schools to keep their students there. So I understand both sides of this coin, and it's just going to take discussion on our part. And does anybody else have any more questions?
What kind of timeline are we looking at?
Right.
Because I
When
know
do you have
football
to
practice is
know?
going to start
I know.
soon. So.
Well, I'm sure it's already started.
And for some of the teams, I mean, I'm not sure, but they may have already, picked their team, so it would not be an option for the students.
maybe not, but
For
when
the
there's a
fall.
standout, I think they make exceptions.
You would want to make a decision in July, just in fairness of it, because you're also making a decision in July around homeschooling and the parameters of what that looks like.
Right.
Okay.
Well, since we have a pretty full agenda and we don't need to talk about it all night, like
Yeah.
you said,
Okay.
can we put this on our, one of our workshops for some more discussion?
Yeah.
Right.
Because there's plenty more things I'd like to hear about it before we put it up for a vote.
Yeah, we can do it like
And it may be that we ask you to come back,
Yeah.
once we have some time to digest and talk
Right.
about it. But I know it is a matter of, a very timely matter, and we will try to get back to you as soon as possible. We will have a meeting early in July.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next up is 5.1, action item relocation of the alternative learning program. Mr. Cheeseman.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the board, over the last few weeks, we have talked about the Ed Tech Center and more specifically around the alternative learning program. And coming back out to you is a map that you've seen multiple times now, but just as a reference point. So in short, there are actually, as we talked about in our community forum last Thursday night, there are actually two opportunities on the table. And opportunity A is that you leave Ed Tech and the alternative learning program currently functioning in the manner that it is, looking at potentially restaffing the district and looking at the fiscal implications of keeping the building in its current state. The second opportunity is to move the alternative learning program to Southside High School. As you see in that diagram, utilizing one wing of the building, specifically utilizing 7 classrooms, mostly for school instruction, administrative housing, storage, but essentially down off of one wing where students could be dropped off in that area. And by doing so, we would move to a blended environment, meaning we'd still have to make staffing changes both here at EdTech, here at the alternative learning program, but also some of the other changes that we're currently making in the district, which overall would ultimately balance your budget. So considering the principal at Southside High School is in support of this, when I last spoke to the principal, Ms. Hamill, she was in support of going to Southside High School, unless she'd like to make different comments to that. But again, I just want to remind you that you have 2 options on the table right now, unless you seek a third option for me to go back and review. Option A, again, is to leave it where it is right now and have us go back and re-strategize to it, or looking at option B of moving your alternative learning program for the 2019-20 school year to Southside High School.
Go ahead.
Well, while he was still up there, I wanted him to, if you don't mind. I want you to emphasize what exactly it is we're talking about.
Sure.
Because we've had a lot of discussion, and the part I'm speaking of is this is not really moving Ed Tech as we know it today.
No, sir.
But I want everyone else to hear that, because I've had a number of calls, a number of questions, and I'm positive that a lot of the public does not understand what you're really talking about.
Sure. So you're looking at the Pathways program specifically around alternative learning, meaning these are typically students who have fallen behind in their academics for various reasons. They could have been out of school homeless. They could have been out of school for medical leave. They could have been not going to school for various reasons. Had family tragedy. It could have been, you can name the reason, but they're behind in their academics. And so in this Pathways program that the principal oversees, these would be the students who would then be moving to Southside High School. These are not the students who have been essentially reviewed as carrying knives, carrying guns, being extremely violent. These are not the students that we're looking at this time. And so there are different opportunities for those students. Additionally, you would have K-5 opportunity in a different location that will present to you at a later time, and also a 6-8 opportunity that we present to you at a later time. But right now, you're looking at students in the Pathways program who have typically just fallen behind for one reason or another.
Right. So the program you want to establish at Southside is the alternative learning program for Pathways only.
Correct.
No disciplinary kids or students assigned to Southside.
They may have had a disciplinary issue at his school, but it's not an issue of violence.
Right.
And so whether that's been the case in the past versus moving in the future, typically there are ways that students enroll into the pathways, and part of that is an administrative placement. But that administrative placement comes to my desk, so we can look at that on a case-by-case basis.
Gotcha. Okay.
Can I ask you a question while you're there, Mr. Cheeseman?
Yes, ma'am.
I know, we stretched out and to Snowden to give them another year to try to work things out.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it not possible to do the same thing at EdTech?
If the board elects to do so, absolutely. We would have to go, that's the two options that you have. You can stretch it out another year if you'd like, and we would go back and redesign as to how we can make that work. Look at the fiscal implications of that, looking at utilizing your fund balance also. You know, there are opportunities that you could look at, sure, but that's a decision that you and the board would make.
So if that's the route you go, let's be more plain spoken.
Sure.
You're looking at trying to plug $600,000 at least.
Yeah, it's 600,000 right now.
So when you talk about looking back at the, I don't know if you said staffing earlier, what was it?
Yeah, staffing and personnel.
Right. What that actually means is you would have to go back and look at cutting staffing and personnel.
10 positions in the district.
Exactly. So, I just want to make sure everybody understands.
Yes.
It isn't just a matter of just wait another year and everything's going to go away.
No.
You're going to cut 10, at least a minimum of 10 more bodies, as well as maybe possibly, I believe I heard in the early meeting, programs at some of our schools.
It's possible, yes. So the
I don't
savings
see
would
how
have
we
to
can
come
lose
from
more
somewhere.
programs at our schools.
No, the savings would have to come from somewhere, and if the alternative learning program, the Pathways program, stays at EdTech right now for the 2019-2020 school year, then that would require our team to go back over the next month and present fiscal actions to you as a board to make decisions on which positions would then be cut down in the district in order to get that 600,000 off the table. And just to remind you, as a Board of Education, you have utilized up to $300,000 a year for the last 5 years in your fund balance in order to try to sustain your budget each and every year. And you have just come under your 8% now. And thankfully thankful to our county commissioners for supporting our $375,000 for our time-limited personnel for those 8 positions. But in short, you would have to make decisions. If you wanted to keep the alternative learning program at the EdTech Center for one more year, as a board, we would bring back to you decisions around which 10 positions you would likely have to cut down and still be able to keep high-quality learning.
And is it not true so that the public also understands, we didn't start out at $600,000?
No, sir, you started at approximately $2 million.
Exactly.
So we have already closed out many positions that were vacant due to transfers, due to retirements, due to people moving away, whatever it might have been.
If I'm not mistaken, we've closed out 13 positions.
Yes, sir.
Already.
Yes, sir.
And now you would say you would have to close out an additional 10.
Yes, sir.
Because you certainly can't go to a fund balance that we don't have much of anymore.
No, the goal is to stop utilizing your fund balance and your planning allotment.
I don't see where you have a lot of choice myself.
So at the end of this current year, the fiscal year ends technically this Friday.
I understand.
So everyone in the audience understands that. You're running from July 1 to June 30th on a fiscal budget. So at the end of this week, we project utilizing $272,000 of your fund balance in order to cover the debt that you had this current year. But that was money that you had projected last year at this time in order to balance your budget for this year. The goal is to stop using your savings account for reoccurring expenses. Your savings account, which is known as your fund balance, should be used in time of need or time of emergency. So you're down under that 8%, and 8% is a recommended amount in order to be fiscally solvent. That's why we're making changes. So in totality, the alternative learning program is not the only change that you've made. You've made a lot of changes over the last 2 months to the district, to many of your schools, I think most principals can tell you they've already suffered losses in some degree or things that are not coming back. So this is not in isolation, this is in addition to.
Right. And the only reason I'm asking these questions, because I already know the answer, is so that the public understands what we've done to get to this point. Because while it's important not to use additional fund balance, it's more important to me to stop eliminating positions in our schools. Because, I mean, sooner or later, I mean, you already have a decline in ADM. If we continue cutting programs, cutting staff, it's going to snowball on you, and this is just going to get worse and worse and worse. You've got to do something drastic. And right now, jobs are important. If you're one of those 10 people that's getting ready to get a pink slip, it would be very important to you.
Absolutely.
We are one of many counties that are being faced with a budget shortfall. So this is not, we are not an isolated county. If you watch any of the news, you're seeing some of them are closing out programs that are important to your students. And they are terminating positions for teachers that have possibly been there for quite a while. The old saying, last one in is the first one out. Well, and also I go back to something that I quote very often. The old saying was, if you do a really good job, you'll always have a job. That's no longer true. And we all know that. There's a lot of people that do a really great job, but they no longer have one. The last thing I want to do is terminate any more positions. I don't want to see any more of our teaching positions or programs go away. I think Beaufort County Schools has already suffered a loss year after year after year. We've had to make cuts. We've gone back to our principals, and we've asked them to increase their class sizes so that we can absorb more positions. And I'm very proud to the two that are standing here, as well as the others, that they've done just that. But now they're saying, we've cut to the bone. Now we're going to start cutting programs that are important to the students. And I will say, this is not an easy decision. However this vote goes, we have, this has been a very difficult time.
And just to follow up on some of that, there's reasons why your budget expanded so much in terms of the need. And those are some of the reasons that you can't control as a board. For example, your fuel costs from the state have gone up, so we project, six-figure changes there. When teacher salaries increase, the state does not cover the amount of their benefit COLAs, so you have to cover that. So there's some of those unfunded mandates that happen that you have to pick up along the line, and so you're also trying to deal with those circumstances.
So can we not let since Terry was talking about notifying the public and letting them know, could we not let them know where the behavior children that you were talking about, where they go?
So right now, we're working on potential homebound services on a case-by-case basis, and specifically where we would educate those students. Since you brought up last week, what if a child doesn't have a home? What would we do for that child? So those are things that we're trying to work on behind the scene right now to bring that plan to the board.
Well, how much additional cost is this homebound services going to be?
You currently already have homebound services with staff in place, so I don't anticipate major cost to it because your staff is already in place and already serving students. And so it's on a case-by-case basis, and they rotate out and they rotate in. So right now, any number I would give you would be forecasting just a guess, but I can look at what we currently pay our homebound teachers.
Well, I'm going to say something. Like it or lump it.
Sure.
This thing has been a political football since back to 2003. And I know some of my colleagues sitting around this table is getting a lot of pressure from some other elected officials. Well, I think the vote's going to come, and I think they're going to finally get what they wanted. They've been beating the drum for years and years, and we've been able to put it off and put it off. I think now the time has come. They have made us go into our fund balance for 5 years or more now.
Yes, sir.
So they backed us into a corner. And who's going to suffer? The children. And it's not fair. It's just not fair. We read that mission and vision statement every month, and now see what we got. We are backed in the corner because of politics.
The only thing I'm going to comment is that the term suffer I disagree with a little bit, Mac, because I think their needs, I think they're going to be provided with, I think Southside is, if the board goes in that direction, Southside is a wonderful school. They will keep their principal, they will keep a lot of their staff that's already with them. So, and I'm just saying from a standpoint of, I'm not downplaying what the facility means to them. I'm just saying, I don't want to downplay what type of school Southside is either.
Well, Southside's a wonderful school, Madam Chairman, but I'm going
I understand what you're saying.
promise you that the number of students that's going to be going from Ed Tech to Southside, you're going to see a decrease in the number.
We might.
Because they're going to go somewhere else.
That's possible.
And right now, I don't really much blame them.
Any other comments or questions?
Everything that I get, I tell you, all the comments that I get, all the phone calls I get is from people who have said that they heard it from other politicians. Okay, so I want to be sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do as far as the Board of Education, and not what somebody has thrown in our ears. You know what I'm saying? So my concern is, let's not forget what we're here for. And if we can do that, we can ride it out. Okay? That's all I want to say. Just not forget. I might not have any children there, you may not have none there. But the fact remains that there is some there that needs to be taken care of. That's all I got to say. Finish.
If everybody else is finished, I call for the question. Let's go ahead and vote.
All right.
You don't have a motion on the floor.
I'll make a motion. Let's go with option 1 or A, whatever you want to call it. Keep it like it is.
I second the motion.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor for option A and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed?
No.
No. All right. Do I have a second motion?
I didn't hear that. Could I hear it again?
Sure.
Leave my hand.
All those opposed, raise your hand. Okay. Did you get that, Cindy? All right. Do I have a motion? Michael? Michael Bilbrough?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. Do you have a vote to, Mac made a motion for option 1 to leave them where they were. Ms. Booth seconded. We had 2 votes in favor and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 against, so that motion was not carried. So now I'm waiting for another motion. Is there a motion for option D?
Sure. I'll make the motion. I mean, if that's what we have to do. I'm not going to come here and accept laying off more of our teachers and employees. Just not going to do it. And I've looked at the budget over and over. I know we have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in things that we have to pay for that we don't have the money. None of this is going to be popular, but nobody's willing to write me a check for $700,000 or $800,000. So I say for 1 year, at least for the next year, move it to Southside. I make the motion to put it at Southside and see how it goes. We're not eliminating an education for children. You're putting them in a fine facility, and they'll be able to get the same quality education they're getting now at a different location.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Williams to go with option B and a second by Mr. Allen. All right, any discussion?
You said for 1 year, we're going to
He's
try.
I
saying
said,
for
let's
1
just
year.
at the end of the year, we'll review it and see where we're at.
Well, I know where we're going to be.
Okay. All right. All those in favor say aye, or a show of hands, right hand.
For 1 year.
All those opposed? Michael?
I'm in favor of Terry's second.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, motion carried. Now, we're going to go on to 5.2. And this is about the Title I plan for 2019-2020.
Greg Singleton.
Mr. Greg Singleton, you're up.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam
And
Chair.
if you'll, we have all these, most of you, Greg passed out a folder. If you don't want to click on it on your computer, if you will go ahead and open your folder.
It's an orange folder. I decided it would be best if I just brought it in paper.
Okay, hold on just a second. Yeah. I'd like to, Greg, for right now, I'd like to call a 2-minute recess. That way, anybody that came would like to leave, you can do so.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, do I have a?
Sure.
Okay.
You need something?
I don't think I need a motion for that.
I think you're the chairman.
All right. Thank you all for attending.
Can you explain to the board what there's 4 here?
Yes.
Who's that?
Be on vacation.
Yeah, she did
Thank you,
send
young
me-
lady,
she
for
sent me an
coming in to
email.
speak. That took a lot of courage. I appreciate it. And Mom, you should be proud. All right, I'm going to declare we are no longer recessed. And I'm going to start, before Greg starts, to tell you why this changed a little bit from proposal A and B the way it was. It's because I had a very informative conversation with Greg yesterday and let him know I really didn't, I really couldn't wrap myself around both options, and I just knew there had to be possibly some gray area there, so that's why he put his thinking cap back on, which I really do appreciate, so I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Originally, we had, in working with Mr. Cheeseman and our stakeholders, I'd come up with 2 proposals, A and B, as far as the District Title I plan for fiscal year 2019-2020. You do have now before you 4 proposals. I did have the opportunity to speak with Ms. Walker yesterday and Superintendent Cheeseman. And I did come up with advisement from Superintendent Cheeseman, 2 additional proposals. So those 2 additional proposals are A1 and B1. And these 4 proposals are for your review for the District Title I plan for the FY20 school year. And each one of these plans, it's 2 spreadsheets. I'll start off by saying that on page 1 of each of the plans, the district set-asides, that is the amount of funds paid for by the district off the top in Title I before disbursement out to the schools, are fairly similar with the set-asides. And those set-asides are district administration, of which one of the major costs is the indirect costs that this federal program pays back to the district. The 1% minimum requirement for parent and family engagement, which, while a very small percentage of the federal ESSA law, is in dollar amounts is one of the largest as far as in the actual legal statutes. The homeless plan, which is a requirement of the ESSA Title I law, this changed a few years back, and this is now a requirement, and we are now able to include costs of transportation, the excess cost to transport homeless students back, and we're able to use federal funds for that. In addition, the excess cost of foster care transportation, that is also, that was a revised change under the federal Title I law as well. Foster students used to be considered homeless. They're now covered under a different law, and it is jointly the responsibility of the LEA and the Child Welfare Agency in that county to take care of the cost of transportation. So that figure is the 1/2 of the total amount of cost. The other cost is picked up by the County Department of Social Services. In addition, you see a set-aside for the preschool program. That is the Title I preschool program. This fully funds 70 slots, in the preschool program. As you know, in addition, we received 80 slots through state funding through the NC Pre-K program and 30 slots through the Exceptional Children's Program. Also, our funds to provide for the Section 504 program, which is an unfunded federal mandate, and which we use funds to provide a system of tracking Section 504 plans. And finally, additional supplemental funding for the limited English proficiency program over and above funds that we receive in state funding and in federal Title III dollars. In order to access federal Title III dollars, you're required to spend some federal Title I funds. And if you look at all four of these proposals, that is probably where the similarities end. But those are the set-asides that we would propose in consultation with our stakeholders to pay for off the top. And I'd pause just a moment if there are any questions about those district set-asides that we would propose to pay for off the top of federal Title I funds prior to going into the differences of the four plans, so to speak.
I have two questions,
Yes.
and these are really more informational just for everybody else. Those set-aside amounts up until we get to the differences, there's no wiggle room in those, right?
Well, that is there to answer it. There could be some wiggle room. For example, parent and family engagement. There is a 1% minimum requirement. Now, if it was the desire of the superintendent of the board to increase that amount and take funding out of the funds to send to school, you certainly can go over and above the 1%.
But 1% is as low as you can go.
1% is the lowest we can go. On administration, there's a maximum of 12%, but we always are under 12% on administration. We keep that well under the 12%. On homeless, there is a calculation I used based on our final June homeless count. And this amount is actually a little bit more than that calculation would be, but let me tell you why I propose that it be higher than that minimum requirement. When we have a homeless child and they require transportation back to their original attendance zone, the law is very clear. If it's in the best interest of the child to stay at their original school due to an act of homelessness, it is the responsibility of the district to provide that transportation. For example, if I have a child at Chalkwanty Primary, and these examples are coming from this past year where we had a hurricane, and we had several children who were displaced due to homelessness. And we had several children who ended up in the Washington attendance area, or the Bath attendance area, or even in Pitt County at some point. Now, if it's determined that it's in the best interest of the child to remain at the original school, then the district's responsible for that excess cost. That is the cost outside of normal yellow school bus transportation in the attendance zone to bring them to school. And there were some instances where it was determined it was in their best interest to remain at that school. There is an appeal process if a parent disagrees. We look at these on a case-by-case basis.
Sure.
And if we determine it is in the child's best interest, we do allow them to stay. But there's a huge cost that comes with that. Now, there's nothing that says that we have to use federal Title I dollars to do that. But for the last 2 years, the logic has been that since this is a federal requirement, and that this is a federal program, and that these are federal funds that are available, that instead of using your local funds, that we use the federal funds available to fulfill the federal requirement. So there is wiggle room, but just know that if we have costs that if we were to reduce that, you may still incur some costs, and that you would have to look at additional sources. Hopefully, we're not going to have any natural disasters or anything this year, and it may be that we don't use that entire amount, that we're able to carry those dollars over into the next year.
Okay, and all of our pre-K slots, those all remain full from year to year, don't they?
We're able to fill the Title I slots every year, and as a matter of fact,
we
send out waiting lists.
Right.
We've sent out letters this past week, and we have 70 slots for preschool through the Title I program. Now, that again is over and above the NC Pre-K program or the program where we have exceptional children. We have 80 NC Pre-K slots, 30 EC. Of these 70, we have 18 slots at SW Snowden. SW Snowden is totally Title I Pre-K because it's not recognized as a child care center, and therefore it cannot have NC Pre-K slots like Eastern, Northeast, or Chalkwanty Primary. There's 12 Title I Pre-K slots at both Northeast and at Chalkwanty Primary, and the balance, I believe it's 44. My math may be wrong. Is at Eastern Elementary. So it does provide that. It provides for the teachers, the teacher assistants, the salaries, the fringes, the benefits, supplies, and the cost of transportation. The state does not fund us to provide transportation for preschool students. So the transportation budget does not include any funds for that. So every year, the Title I program reimburses the Transportation Department approximately $40,000 for the additional cost of carrying students in the pre-K realm to school, because your state transportation formula is based on a K-12 allocation. So we do pay the district back that cost. We also do that in EC. We also do that in NC pre-K as
Which
well.
I still cannot understand why the state doesn't provide for that, because to me, they should be providing for transportation for pre-K, but that's another day.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to let him move on unless somebody has a question about those figures in yellow. Okay, go ahead.
All right, and this is again where the plan changes. Originally, I had put together two proposals, A and B. And in proposals A and B, proposal A was a proposal that, similar to the current year where you're currently in, you funded 8 schools, and that did not include P.S. Jones. Proposal B was a proposal that included the funding of P.S. Jones. And on both of those proposals, if you look down at the last, it's a green color, line, it's about 1.3 million that we would be sending out to be dispersed amongst those either 8 or 9 schools. But I'd like to call your attention also to this yellow line here, the one that says $598,000. That is what the district proposes in proposals A and B to put in unbudgeted reserve in the course of this coming year. I mean, we're getting a planning allotment of about $2.3 million. We propose to put that in unbudgeted reserve, and it's a large amount. And you may say, why in the world do we need to put that much in unbudgeted reserve? We would propose to do that due to the fact that the allocation, the first allocation of these federal dollars, which used to come down in the very beginning of October, is now not coming down until the end of October. And this would allow us, with the program, to have enough, I hate to use the term fund balance, but Title I kind of has a fund balance too. This would allow us to have enough in our savings account, if you will, to have enough to cover the paychecks of our teachers once they come back through the October pay period, all right? So that is with proposals A and B. I will call your attention to proposals A1 and B1. Proposal A1 is similar to proposal A in that it does not include P.S. Jones on the second page. Proposal B1 is similar to proposal B in that it does include P.S. Jones on the second page. However, on proposals A1 and B1, if you look at those same green and yellow lines again, first of all, if you look at the yellow line, in those proposals, we only propose to reserve enough in unbudgeted reserve, or our savings account, if you would, to cover paychecks through the September pay period of 2020. And in that scenario, we would have less that we would save. And then if you take a look at that bottom green line, we would send out about $1.5 million to the either 8 or 9 served Title I schools. In essence, in these proposals, it would be a course of action that we have done the last couple of years. And if I may just give you just a brief history. Many years ago, I've been coming up here a long time, I guess now, when I first was the Title I director, we would receive a planning allotment before Easter every year as far as what the proposed amount was that we would receive from the federal government in Title I plans for the upcoming school year. Over time, that planning allotment has come later and later. This year it came about at the end of the first week of June. And that's when I immediately put everything else aside and started working on this. Likewise, when I first began many years ago, the allocation would drop. The federal government runs on a year from October to September. And that is dissimilar from the state of North Carolina that runs on a year from July to June. Many years ago, by the second week in October, we would receive those new funds coming down. We only needed to reserve enough carryover to cover us through September, because we would have the cash on hand to cut those checks on October 31st. Last year, for the second year in a row, we did not. Last year, the payroll had to be run, I believe, on the 27th. We had to order federal cash to run payroll. And Mr. Carroll could probably speak better to this, on the 23rd or 24th of October. And the federal, Mr. Carroll. that federal funding did not come down until the day after we needed it to run that payroll. So you say, well, what's the difference? Well, what we've done the last couple of years is, when this has happened, we, the Title I program and the finance officer, has borrowed from your local funds that you receive to cover those paychecks in October. And then in November, we have simply paid that money back to local, and we've moved those people back over. So that is the reason that you have such a vast difference. I project next year that the monthly Title I payroll for all teachers, teacher assistants, administrative staff, secretaries, tutors, substitutes, you name it, I predict that the monthly payroll will be approximately around $180,000 a month. And that is including benefits such as retirement and hospitalization. In your previous discussion about the alternative learning program, it was mentioned about increased salaries and the increased cost of benefits and hospitalization and so forth. I'm basing this on the House budget, where everyone did receive a raise. But more importantly than that, what we've had to deal with, not just in federal programs, but I think the district as a whole in recent years, is the state has increased the rate of hospitalization and retirement. Next year, for the first time, when you put Social Security and retirement together, I mean, it's Willie, what is that rate for next year? I wrote it down.
It's 2651, I believe.
I mean, you're talking over 25. I mean, I think it's 20.4 or something, isn't it? 20.43, is that the retirement?
The retirements right now, there are two out there. I
There's
based the
the first
budget
one.
on
I used the House
1957.
Right.
And then you put the 7.65 on top of it, so you're about
So
26.
you're over, bottom line is, on a salary, you automatically 25% for Social Security and retirement, and then a 6,300 on
6,350.
hospitalization. So a teacher starting out at $35,000 a year for us, that's a $50,000 teacher.
Sure.
And he or she gets 10 sick days too. So that's another $1,100. So what's happened is, and I'm all about teachers getting raises, let me make that very clear, because I was one for many years, and I support that. But what has happened is those additional fixed costs have made it more difficult to run the personnel of the program. And again, that's not just for federal programs. I think that's for any program in the district. Those fixed costs are costs that you as a board don't have control over. So I just wanted to clarify why that is different with those unbudgeted reserves. It's to make that payroll. In the most optimal and best financial situation, I think it's a fine idea, and I think it's a very conservative approach. I think it's smart to have enough savings in the bank to be able to cover those October paychecks. At the same time, I also understand that as a board and as a community and as a school system, that we want to be able to send as much out to help as many children as possible as well. So I understand both arguments, and I certainly see both sides of it.
Well, essentially, the money gets there.
It does.
It's just you're holding it for next year, right?
We're holding it in order to cover those paychecks. Like
Right.
right now, whatever we determine tonight, as far as placing unbudgeted reserve, it's not to cover the paychecks this July, August, September, or October. It is of 2020. Because what we will carry over on Friday night, that is the cash that we'll have on hand in the Title I program as of Friday night, the end of the fiscal year. That is what we will use to cover the July, August, and September paychecks of 2019. Yes.
Can I stop you and ask Willie Mike a question?
Yes, sir.
While it's on my mind. When you talk about making payments on retirement and benefits and things like that to the state, how often do you do that on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, yearly
Yep.
basis?
We do it within 5 working days, usually by the 5th of the following month it has to be made.
So you do it on a monthly basis
Yes, sir.
every month?
And the 26.5% was this year's percentages. Next year's would be about 27.2% for those fringes on those, not counting hospitalization.
So with those four proposals, that is how we get to those numbers. I will call your attention to this very bottom line on page 1 of each of the four proposals. With proposals A and B, which puts enough in unbudgeted reserve to cover paychecks through October of 2020. Once we go back to the divider, the divider is the number of low-income children overall in the district, which is 2,611, we end up with a minimum per pupil allocation of $369.72 per impoverished child. On proposals A1 and B1, where you're only setting aside enough to cover through the September paychecks, we end up with a per pupil allocation, again, an allocation per impoverished child of $419.90. And that is how you're able to send more out to the schools in those proposals.
Pastor. So if you looked at A1 or B1.
Yes, sir.
Essentially, you're saying we would look at covering the cost through September.
Yes, sir.
And if the board decided A1 or B1.
Yes, sir.
It's with the understanding that if there were a hiccup that came along the line and we didn't get our drop for October, that the board would allow us to use our fund balance or another means to pay for the October pay. And then after it dropped in, the board would recognize that we'd immediately replenish our own money.
It's like Butch said, it'd be temporary.
But that's why I just want to make sure that
That is so.
everyone.
And that is what we have, that is what we will probably do this October, and that is what we did last October as well. Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure that everybody knows.
Essentially, what we do is we mimic his federal 3 in local, so we can track it, that we make sure we move those costs back to his federal program once his money drops.
Right, and I just want to make sure that, come September, headed into hurricane season kind of thing, I just want to make sure that we're aware, everyone's on the same page, because we're trying to be fiscally responsible.
The issue is, with the hurricane, is the cash flow piece.
Right.
To be able to front the money, being that we've already fronted it for those federal salaries.
Are you working with a larger sum of money this year?
I need to know.
I'm more comfortable having him budget an extra month than just to take me through September.
That's what I need.
I know that you are. I respect that. But I don't support that.
It's okay.
Because and I'm just going to put out there, I don't see how we can not fund P.S. Jones with Title I money, when all the other middle schools are getting Title I money and they were low performing. I don't know what they're going to be this year, but they were low performing. I think it's really hard to look at a school and a faculty and a principal and go, we're going to give it to everybody else but not you. We know you were low performing, but
Good luck.
yeah, I'm not for that. I'm not for that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, this is only a one-time fix, because that money is gonna roll over again next year. So, what you're doing is taking the October money and putting it out there now. So next October, you're gonna have to turn around, it's really, you're really.
No, it's not a one-time fix at all.
Because he's rolling over, he said he's rolling over $500,000.
That's right. See, I'll take that, we'll take that, and that's what we used to get in September. What this would do, well, I guess if you say, it depends what your definition of a one-term fix is. It would fix it, and, for lack of a better word, if you put that much in unbudgeted reserve, I have a spreadsheet that I use where I take every salary of every individual currently in Title I, and I take a percentage and I build in a 2% raise on everyone, and that gives me this number with that matrix that I developed on an Excel spreadsheet to let me know. Now, what's going to happen is every year that number's probably going to go up because salaries and benefits go up.
Yep.
So that might be a little bit more next year.
But
But
we'll deal with that then.
That's when you would have to come back again, but it would allow you to be able to be in a position when you came back in July of 2020 to take a look at the FY '21, we would hopefully be carrying over closer to that 598,000, which would get you enough to hopefully get you to October 2020.
May not have to do
And I will say this, many years ago, we didn't have this problem because we never had to worry about covering that October paycheck. It's only been in the last couple of years that the money hasn't come down. And that's when it has become troublesome and worrisome for us. In the past, when that money would come in the middle of October, I only had to keep enough aside to get us through September. And you can still choose to do that. It's just, we wanted to give you the options to see how that worked. So you as a board could chime in.
Okay. TW, I know you have a question.
Number one, did you have a lower amount of money to pull from this year than you did last year?
No, we had, well, it depends as far as now, are you talking about the overall budget, Mr. Allen? or
Yes,
overall?
total dollars.
Total dollars.
Not
The
depending
total
on
dollars.
anything, total.
We, this year, if you look on the page one at the very top in blue, the proposed planning allotment from DPI is about 2.33 million, okay? If you can stand by just a moment.
Yeah, what was it the year we're finishing up right now?
Yeah.
The planning allotment for the year that we just finished up,
Right.
that planning allotment started at about 2.08, but we received an additional allocation because of other LEAs that didn't use their money, and we ended up with about 2.332 is
So
what
it's
I
about
have
the
here.
same thing.
It is pretty even, Steven. Yes, sir, it
I bet
is.
they'll use their
Can-
money this year.
Can I ask a question?
You go first,
Absolutely.
because we got the same question.
All right, so could you have what NES, I'm gonna talk about NES, I'm pretty sure EC may grab a hold of Snowden, so, all right, so Northeast.
Yes, sir.
What was their allotment last year? I think it was around one.
Last year, at Northeast, their allocation,
Northeast.
the Northeast allocation the year that we're finishing Friday was $179,776.41.
That's right, I got you. So, we're already gonna lose $65,000 to NES on a low-performing school.
If you were to go with one of these scenarios. It's a proposed scenario, and with what I developed, it would. And it's a good, and I see where your question's going, it's an excellent question. What happened at Northeast was, and if you bear with me just a moment, with Northeast, from last year to this year, when we take a look at the poverty percentages of all schools increased. A lot of that had to do with the hurricane. But their rank order in poverty compared to those other schools changed. And so it put them kind of out of the 8 or 9 schools a little bit further down the list, so to speak. For example, last year with Northeast, we served 8 schools last year, Title I. Northeast, as far as their rank in poverty, was number 6. This year with Northeast, if we choose not to serve P.S. Jones and serve only, and keep 8 schools, they will have dropped to 7. But if we put P.S. Jones in, they're going to drop 2, and they would drop to 8. So they dropped. And another school along those same lines that dropped significantly was John Cotton Taylor. Their rank order also dropped significantly. Last year, Taylor was the 2nd most impoverished school, and this year, Taylor is the 6th most impoverished school. And so they dropped. And then there were changes in the opposite direction. And I would point you to Chocowinity Middle, which last year, out of 8 schools served, was the 7th most impoverished. But this year, Chocowinity Middle is the 5th most impoverished. Everyone's percentages changes, but the rank order changed is what happened.
The one that looks to take the biggest hit is Snowden to me.
Yeah.
And it would depend on which of the scenarios you're referring to, Mr. Allen, but there is one, yes, that they do. There is one, and if you'll give me just a moment,
Which one?
I'm going to switch back to this year.
A1 and B1 keep their teachers.
Okay.
It just minimizes their discretionary funding, which, based off of how we manipulate our school budget, it wouldn't mean that they wouldn't get any funding. It just means out of this portion,
They would get it in from other revenues.
Mr. Allen, I think you're referring to Proposal B about Snowden, in which their funding would be reduced to the point that they wouldn't have enough to cover the cost of the second teacher they traditionally had. They would still have some discretionary funding, approximately $22,000, but that's not enough to make up the cost difference of the teacher. So in Proposal B, if I had to put the proposals in order, Proposal B may be the proposal in which there was the least amount, there was the vast amount of cuts and positions lost would be Proposal B. So you are correct. Snowden will take the largest hit in B. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Terry, were you finished?
I'm done right now.
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to put the numbers together. Same kind of question you had. Isn't Eastern this year listed as the 2nd most?
In the current year that we're in today,
Yeah.
their rank order was number 3 They were at 56.3% for the current year.
And they're number 2 this year.
Number 2.
Yeah, what affected that?
I mean,
That now
I-
you've
no,
got
Are you
right
talking about
numbers?
to the next year?
This is for next
No, last year, the year we're finishing, they
The
were
year
number
we're
3.
finishing,
They were number 3.
they were number 3, yes.
But the year we're talking about now, they're
Going
number
into,
2.
Greater number of students in poverty.
they had their percentage, if you bear with me just a moment, I'm going back from year to
The
year.
percentage is 69 this year.
All right.
But aren't they the number 2 ranked school this year?
They were
Eastern for the year we're
66.
going into would be the second most impoverished, yes.
Okay.
They
would.
went from 66% to
So,
69, right?
I must have misunderstood then, because,
They were 60.
Now, everyone's percentage changed, but you're asking if their rank order changed.
I know the difference between the percentage of kids and the ranked order.
Yes.
Because I've got all that written right here.
Sure.
But only under B1 do they actually get their money back. I mean, we'd have to use one of those two to get, A and B would not be, without one, B would not work for them.
I believe under B, they would lose,
$100,000.
it would be enough that's 2 teachers, I believe, under B, yes, sir.
Even though they're
So it'd be
second.
A.
That is correct, yes, sir, it would. Whereas in B1, where we reduce the amount that we put in unbudgeted reserve and send more out to schools, in that scenario, they would keep the 5 teachers. You are correct.
B takes a big hit
It
on
does.
everybody.
B is the one that takes the biggest hit. Again, that is the one where you would be adding
I already
Biz
put that
Jones, but you're
aside.
also putting enough,
It's on the
to go through
side.
October.
Well, and as Greg and I spoke about yesterday, you go from PS Jones not getting any to them getting the biggest piece of the pie. because
Well, they had the largest number of
They had the
impoverished
largest
students.
enrollment,
Even though their
so-
poverty percentage is lower, when you put the multiplier in there, because I believe it's 472 students, they had the largest number of impoverished students. I mean, PS Jones has more impoverished students than some schools have students.
I take that back, they actually don't get the biggest piece of the pie.
But what makes this hard to understand? I mean, I'm just trying to figure it out. I want to make sure I vote for the right one.
Yes, I understand, yes, sir.
And you've given us a lot of choices.
Yes, sir.
Take CPS.
Yes, sir.
Last year, they were ranked number, I've got them right here, so you don't have to look, they're ranked number 4.
And I think this coming
This
year,
year, they're going to be ranked number
3,
3.
I believe,
So
yes.
you wouldn't think they would be losing because they're going up in rank.
It depends on the
But-
scenario, yes.
But still, they went from 232,000 under even B1 and 2 to 180,000. They're losing over $50,000 and their rank went up.
Because you're adding another.
Well, if you don't add a school,
Right.
they still go down.
That's correct.
I mean,
If you
even
take a
A, they
look-
went down to 201, they lost 31,000, and yet they went up the ladder, so.
That's right.
So it doesn't make sense, because we're saying over here, if you go down the ladder, you lose money. Well, why do you lose money if you go up the ladder?
Because there's less spendable, and because we're talking about positions and dollars, it depends, because the goal is to try to reduce the number of losses of positions. When you mention CPS in scenario A1, which is the scenario where you'd only have care, you'd only reserve enough care to September, and you don't have PS Jones, they go to $240,000, they keep their 2 teachers and have $125,000 in discretionary spending. She could hire 2 veteran teachers.
Yeah.
In that
This
particular
way it
one.
gonna be one.
What's the chances of, you said you got more money because somebody didn't get
I
their,
guess
didn't use
that's what we
it.
got.
What's the chances of that happening again?
It's very possible. This is what they always tell us, Mr. Allen. When they give me this 2.33 million number, they say, Greg, this is your plan allotment for Title I. Now, when the rubber meets the road in October, and we tell you what you finally really gonna get, it might be 15% less, it might be 15% less. Now, this past year that we're in, we came out on the better end of the deal. We got a little bit more. I've also been here in years when we got the short end of the stick and we lost $20,000 or $25,000 too. And I wish I could answer your question in a positive way and say, yeah, I know we're going to get it. And no one is hoping for it more than me, but it could go either way depending on that. One thing, and we touched on this earlier this evening about enrollment, when we look at our total number of enrollment, our enrollment's gone down. But when we lose enrollment, we lose all kind of children. We lose affluent children, we lose middle-class children, but we also lose impoverished children. And with the funding formula, it's partially based on the population of 5 to 17-year-olds that reside in the county, but it's also partially based on, of those, how many of them are considered impoverished as well.
Okay, if there aren't any other questions, I would entertain a motion for us to accept one of these plans. Do I have a motion?
I move we accept, proposal B-1.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Okay, all right. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Singleton. Now, we're going to go to 5.3 budget amendment. Mr. Carolyn.
That's the one I was going for.
Fortunately, I did not have to prepare a budget amendment for you right now because our state and federal budgets are in based on the latest allotment, so there was no increase. The other ones will change based on how I have to maximize those state and federal dollars and move them within the local funds.
Okay.
So I didn't bring you a budget amendment for that tonight.
Thanks, Greg.
It's a lot of information. Yeah.
All right, you want me to move on then?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we'll move on to 5.4, budget resolution. Mr. Carolyn, and you got a link there, everybody?
Based on the cover sheet that we sent you was based on our last meeting on June the 11th, when we talked about the cuts that we were trying to maximize that $1.517 million difference. So if you turn to your budget resolution, this is the same format that we used last year. I took the whole dollar amounts from the budget notebooks that you all had. And then when we get to the local budget, Fund 2, there are colored highlights that reflect how I changed the values between the notebook and this budget resolution to address that $1.5 million. Keep in mind, the issue with Snowden and the $1.5 million are some of those positions are in state, so I'm maximizing state dollars, so I'm reducing the local. So it's at the end of the year when we find, or the end of the hiring practices, when we find out who we have, how much they're going to be paid, I will be moving them to maximize position allotment, months of employment, and minimizing the dollar cost in the local budget. So if you look at the first one, our classroom teachers in PRC 001, that was where I took the $650,000 for the 13 positions that we were going to eliminate. And if you look at the appropriation that we're getting from the county, they took the entire cost of the SROs. There was money that we were paying in state, so now I'm going to be able to maximize some state dollars over there as well. So that's where that hit changed. In PRC 02, when we did the alignment of the directors and the shifting them back and forth, there's $135,000 difference there. PRC 03 is where we're maximizing the shift in the EdTech change of $556,526. The charter schools, if you'll recall, that one was based on $1.215 million if they gave us the additional $2 million. So this had a reduction based on the current funding that we're anticipating on getting from the county. So it had a decrease of $282,436. PRC 39, that's where we received that additional $570,000 for those additional 6 SROs they gave us this past year. Transportation, we had budgeted an increase of about $378,000 for anticipated fuel costs. We reduced that one by $278,000, so we do have $100,000 in there for additional fuel costs if we need it in the coming year. And then the plant operations, we decreased about $63,000 to make the numbers work. Keep in mind, this budget is based on a across-the-board 3%. There's rumors that we may get as low as a 1% in the classified. We think that we can make that difference up within the shifts in the salaries and what we actually get. So the other ones are basically driven straight off of the budget resolution there again, the budget booklet that you were given, just rounded into whole dollars. Like last year, funds 6, 7, and 8, we did not budget because they're basically driven off of their carryovers and revenues that they generate in any given year. So once we have their carryover, any payables that they will come in June or July, we will put those monies in their funds and bring it back for a budget amendment.
Okay, all right. Are there any questions? Can I entertain a motion to accept this budget resolution as Mr. Carolyn has presented?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. You are still up?
Yes, ma'am. As y'all have done in the past, you've granted the finance officer and the superintendent the authority to make the moves to maximize state and federal dollars to lessen the impact on local money, and then bring those budget amendments back to you after the year-end close. We'd like to ask that you approve Mr. Cheeseman and I to make those same moves on your behalf.
All right, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, one more, and this is an update to the insurance coverage.
The property and liability, we're seeing about a $13,000 increase this coming year. And one of the things that, when we had our review with our broker or agent, whatever you want to call him, he presented us with an option for an active shooter policy, something that we do not currently have. In talking with Mr. Cheeseman and looking at the cost of $2,000 for $1 million coverage that would help relocate, clean up, help with any litigation we may have, we found that it was a very reasonable price, and we would like to proceed with that insurance policy.
Okay, have a motion?
Is that 2,000 on top of the 13,000?
Yes, sir.
increase?
So we're looking
So
at
total
50.
15 increase.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Move approval.
Okay, we've got a motion by Butch and a second by Mr. Draper. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Mr. Cheeseman, 5.7 P.S. Jones Memorial Park, and he has passed out something
Single sheet of paper.
at the beginning of our
So I don't have it.
meeting.
If you need another one, I'll give it to you. The title says Ed Tech Center Campus Considerations for the Joint User Agreement with the City of Washington. This is just a follow-up to the meeting that Ms. Booth and I had with the City of Washington, specifically around the usage of the park, as charged on bringing back some ideas for the board to entertain, either today to make a decision on, or if you'd like to make change to this. But some suggestions of allowable usage of the park inside the fence. Right, Ms. Booth, so we're talking just inside the fence, not outside the fence. So inside the fence, as you can see, if people sign up to use the park, tables, chairs, runners, canopies, stages, amplified sound, but that goes back to an ordinance. Leashed pets, that goes back to an ordinance. But really what the City of Washington wanted to know is, what won't you allow? And so if you just look at that list real quick, when we talk about tents with side panels, what we really mean is no one could, take on ownership of living there and stake down and say, here, I'm planted. But all the way down, bicycles, skateboards, any type of fires, like bringing a fire pit or having a campfire there, cooking of any kind, they could do it outside the fence. Alcohol, smoking, fireworks, motorized vehicles. I'm not talking a motorized wheelchair. I'm talking about, true golf cart, scooter, moped. So these are some ideas that we can present to the City of Washington, but I could also entertain if you'd like me to add or subtract.
Under motorized vehicles, I would want to make sure that the exception to that is handicap scooters and...
Yes, I'll document that.
Okay. A lot of people that have handicap scooters that are motorized, and I want to make sure that they're allowed in there.
We'll make sure it's permissible.
Right. Ms. Booth?
Do you, what do you think about the vendors that want to go into the park? Do they need a permit? You think they need to get a permit?
I think that would be based off of what the City of Washington's ordinance would be and what they're trying to bring in. If you were actually staging, say, some type of festival where people wanted to come in and set up a booth and sell items, and the festival alone would probably need a permit in that regard.
I talked with Teresa the other day, and she said that it really depended on what the board wanted as far as asking for a permit. I mean, they could do the permit, but it really depended on what the board wanted as far as asking for a permit for them to sell.
Right. Well, when they reach out to us to see what our availability is, typically what's happening now is the City of Washington will reach out to us to see if we have any blocked dates that can't be used. But we could always speak with them and say if it's a large opportunity, a large party, a large festival, whatever it is, to have City of Washington contact us, I'm sure that, we could request a permit of some kind.
I think, and this might have been answered at your meeting, but when there is an event there and there is food being served, whether it's being sold or served, where does the liability lie if someone gets sick off said food? Does it lie with us, Willie Matt? Because it's
When I
our
was a county
property?
manager, it fell under your property and liability.
So it
It's
does
still
lie.
your property, and if you're approving the vendor to be there for that food, they're taking on the
Now,
liability.
that would be where, to me, a permit would be not 100% protection, but to get a permit, there's certain things that you have to prove.
One of the
right?
things
And I'm
that-
not talking about selling, I'm talking about a permit to serve food.
One of the things that we had at the Scuppernong River Festival was the health department came in and inspected the
That's who
food
do it.
vendors.
Right.
That's who's gonna do it. I mean, they would have to have, if they're doing any kind of type of food, they would have to have a permit from the health department.
Okay. Is that stipulated somewhere so that they know ahead of time? Because what I wouldn't want to do is somebody to show up and not know that, and then be told, well, you haven't been inspected, therefore you can't serve. I'd want to make sure all that's spelled out in advance.
Well, they're gonna get that when they're
When
gonna
they
go
sign up?
through. When they go
Okay.
through to get the permit from the city, they will know that. They'll tell them that.
So is the city responsible for managing the calendar of events, I guess?
Yes.
So
the city, when someone registers with the city contacts us to determine if we have any dates we need to block out. So we have first right of refusal, is the best way to say
Right.
it. But yes, we've asked the city in this agreement to take on the ownership of the calendar.
Are there any other questions, or is there anything, Ms. Booth, from this meeting that you took away that you feel like we need to know, or?
You mean with this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, no. No, I'm
Okay.
fine.
I guess I'm being a little, under canopies, the under 400 square feet, is that each canopy has to be
Yeah.
under 400 square feet?
I put that there just on the basis of a 20 by 20.
Right, okay.
So it's-
But you could have multiples of
Oh,
20
yeah.
by 20s.
You could have 20 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You could have the many that want to stack.
I can rewrite it so it says per canopy or each.
Yeah,
canopy.
that's,
No, that's a good question.
Yeah, because on a large event, that surely wouldn't hold
It wouldn't
many
be.
people, yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
I've been stacking under 20 by 20 with a lot of people in the train, and it gets tight quick.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, then, if there are no more questions or concerns, can I entertain a motion to approve this? Since it's under action? All right? Yes,
Just
ma'am.
before you go,
Sure.
the leased pets,
Optional, it's up to you. If you want me to take it off and put it under not allowable, I
now,
can
we
do
have,
that.
I mean, people are just not taking care of their pets when they go through there, and, it's not good that you have to go to the park and walk in pets.
So would you like me to move it under the not allowable?
Yes.
All right.
I agree with that,
Okay.
Ms. Booth. I agree with
Because
that.
people let their dogs do whatever they want to,
Yes.
they don't.
Well, and not
Don't
only
think
that,
any of
sometimes with a lot of people, a non-aggressive animal might become aggressive.
So under not allowable, you're just saying pets in general.
Right.
Okay.
I think pets in general.
Pet/animal?
No, yeah,
All right.
okay. Thank you, Ms. Booth. I let that get down. All right, if there are no other questions or any additions or subtractions, now can I entertain a motion?
Move approval.
Move approval, do I have a second? And we got a second, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. And now we have a motion to go into closed session.
I move that we go into closed session pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A1 and 8 to prevent disclosure of confidential personnel files under GS 115C-321.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. All right, we're back in open session now, and I need a motion to approve our personnel agenda.
So moved.
Yeah.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a couple of seconds. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carried. Calendar for 2019, July. If everybody will look at if they have a calendar on their phone or somewhere, they can see July. Technically, we'd be meeting the 9th. The second Tuesday would be the 9th.
I thought you were meaning the first and third.
The first and third, or the second and the 16th.
Well, the second would
So
be.
my
That would just be
I
next
know, so my
Tuesday.
question would be, are there things that need to be approved that need us to meet? So can we bump that to the 9th?
Yeah, we can do the 9th and the 23rd if you're good with that.
23rd, I will not be here unless you're meeting in Myrtle Beach, and I will not be calling in.
Who'll call you? I got your number.
Call me. You might get it.
He won't answer.
Because I would put it on speaker.
That's fine.
9th and the 23rd then? Okay.
Both at 5:30.
Both at 5:30, the 9th and the 23rd. And if something else comes up, we will certainly contact you. All right?
I'm scheduled for surgery on the 9th.
On the 9th?
Okay.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter, I mean, if you got enough to
It
do.
does matter. Matters
Yeah. Now, on the Monday, the 8th, is that a conflict, Ms. Booth? Are you
No.
going to be prepping for? Is that a conflict for anybody else, the 8th instead of the 9th?
Good.
Okay.
Good one.
All right.
Okay, let's change that to the 8th then. Is that okay, Ms. Booth?
Yes, fine.
All right. I think the only one that may have the conflict may be Mac.
Meetings or
He
something.
travels some certain nights, but I'll contact Mac in the morning and make sure that's okay. All right, and still, if we go for the 8th, we'll still go for the 23rd for now.
Okay.
All right, board member updates. I'm going to start at this end. Mr. Draper?
I have nothing.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Oliver?
I have nothing.
Mr. Allen?
I have nothing.
All right. I really don't have anything other than to thank everybody that came out tonight. All right?
I'm good.
I'm good. I just want to thank everybody for coming out in the community, helping us make this decision.
Yes.
A hard decision.
Hard decisions, I do. I thank everybody that attended our meeting last Tuesday night in Aurora, and everybody that attended Thursday night at the Ed Tech Center. I do want to thank them. And one of the things, I'm going to say this as a board member update before we get to Ms. Booth. One of the things we have discussed is next year to kind of go on the road a little bit and to try to host maybe
used to
one of
do
our
that.
meetings each month at one of our schools.
We used to
And
do
that way
that.
we
That's a
can
good
make
idea.
sure we invite that school's community of parents. And I think it's good to bring your students too, to let them see the decisions. So just be thinking about that. I don't know if that's something we want to try to do in the fall once school starts back.
Well, I agree. I think it's a great idea. We may have to adjust the time, or I'm
Right.
going to be late.
Sure.
I can
Okay.
just assure you of that.
And we can do that. We can do that. I think if it
Well,
means
if
we
you
can.
make it in, if Snowden, for instance,
Right.
I mean, I leave work at 5. I normally leave at 4:30 to try to make these appointments at 5:30. I'll never get to Snowden by 5:30.
Yeah, we can
That's all I'm
adjust
saying.
it.
We would
Right.
have to adjust times depending on where the school is all.
And I
Or I'll
think,
be late. That's
I
okay.
think that also works for
I'm
people in
good.
the community too. They need time to get off work. So
Right.
we'll certainly do that, but thank you.
You know
But
what-
we did want to try to
what-
do that.
So you know what I'm thinking? You'd make it because you followed me
Yeah.
from Aurora tonight and nearly ran
Well,
over
you-
me all the way from Aurora.
I followed you. I didn't have to push you too hard.
I was going to say, I was
You were
speeding.
cruising pretty
I
good.
was
I'll be on
speeding quite a bit.
TV
You were
now.
right
You'll
with
get
it.
Oh, I was.
I'm not going to admit to any speeding. Ms. Booth, do you have anything? No. Okay, all right, if there are no other updates from board members, Mr. Cheeseman.
I attended the state superintendent's quarterly meeting yesterday in Asheville, North Carolina, where the state superintendent, Mark Johnson, talked about iStation, which you may be hearing from our teachers about.
Already have.
Yes.
Specifically talked about how the M-Class contract had expired. He talked about the RFP process, and he talked about how they came to a 3-year, multi-million-dollar agreement with iStation. So in short, he essentially said to us yesterday that, this is coming and to prepare for it. So Part of our concerns right now is the decision was announced after our teachers went home. So we're really looking at how we can manage it with some of the training at the beginning of the year. And again, this is really around looking at elementary education. Also, starting July 1st, I'll be providing the board opposite week updates. So this is the Cheeseman Chronicles that you had asked for. This is a way of sending out information to you so you have updates on just various items, whether it be legislative items or personnel items or whatever it might be, activities that you may want to attend in other towns in our county related to the school. So starting July 1, I'll have that for you. Or I'll say sometime in July I'll have that for you. The other part is, most recently, I was just elected as the vice chairman of the Northeast RISA, so I'm very excited about that.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And I was also elected to be part of the North Carolina State Superintendent's Executive Board. So I'm one of 2 superintendents in Region 1 that represents 15 counties now.
Great.
To be a part of the board that meets directly with the state superintendent, state board officials. So Beaufort County Schools now has a seat at that table. And then finally, on July 8th when we meet, I'll provide you the superintendent's evaluation instrument, as it's that time of year for my evaluation. And either I or a designee of mine will coach you on what that instrument looks like, and then we'll go to closed session at the end of July so I can do my presentation to you for my evaluation for your consideration. All right, and that's my update.
And I want to add, speaking of, for those of you that have not read about it in the newspaper or been approached, because I know Terry probably has and I have, and maybe you see, do your reading on what iStation is compared to Amplify, I think is what has been used. Is that correct?
Amplify and M-Class.
Yes, and M-Class. But go back and read about what that is going to mean for our young students. And that's all I'm going to say. I don't think as chairman I can really make too many more comments other than the fact that it is very different. And I have yet to talk to an elementary teacher that thinks it's what's best for our children.
So what I'll do is I'll forward you information provided by the state superintendent and also our executive director of the State Superintendent's Association, so you can see the viewpoints. But the biggest thing right now is just the implementation and the training for teachers to be ready when school starts. And so there's a lot of things happening with that right now.
Yes, this takes away the assessment from the teacher and puts it on a computer, basically. So the one-on-one assessments would cease. Okay, with all of that said,
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you all.
I'd like to congratulate Cindy.
Yay!